Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Spotlight Companion video with Konstantinos and myself. And this week we're going to be delving into the Nord, because this week we're talking about the songs of the last Fire Child. So this was an interesting little spotlight for me because it's moving away from the history and the people and into the mythology behind the people, which is fascinating. Where we learn a bit about possibly one of Surtur's last children and how the Nords view him in their folk tales. Where did the influence come to start to move into the greater, I suppose, mythology of the people rather than just focusing on actual events and history?
I think it's very specific to the Nords, this kind of approach. The Nords have a very oral tradition instead of record keeping, and well, they do, I guess, but for trade and
Sure.
jarls and kings. But other than that, their main history is oral. It's oral tradition. They recount events through sagas and eddas and songs and bardic tales. So we thought it would be appropriate to kind of tackle one historic event and perhaps ongoing event, but through the eyes of folkloric tradition. And it also adds a certain element of horror to it, especially when you think that children sing these songs, which are not nice songs, and they're not talking about a nice being overall. Because this spotlight kind of touches on two factions. We see it through the eyes of the Nords, but in a way, I think it's a little obvious also from the art that comes with it that it also has a little to do with the Old Dominion.
Yeah, it was interesting because even things like the rhyme that is used for counting in children's games, when other people from other races hear it, they kind of blanch as if there is that underlying current that there's more going on. And perhaps it touches then on other people's folklore, mythology, and history, and not just the Nords themselves.
I think this reflects a lot what makes the Nords unique in the world. Their understanding of life is not very bright, and it does not beautify things. It is very cruel, it is very harsh, and it is why the Nords are how they are. It is very easy to consider them barbarians. They are not. They just lead very, very hard lives with dangers that, as the spotlight portrays, are not always, oh, it's a big monster. No, there are other things than big monsters or big lizards or big wolves, vargs, etc. They have real problems in Mannheim.
Yeah, I suppose whenever life is a constant cruel battery against you and your people, you don't really have happy uplifting tales. You have cautionary tales, and then sort of the heroic sagas that go alongside them. And in some cases, the way to keep children safe is to teach them these sort of rhymes from an early age, which is interesting. Also, I want to say it's Thirim, who's counted as being, the sort of father of fire and ice. We have a very ice feel to the Nords in the main, but with this little tale, with the little history that goes with it for the fire, and talk about things like the Barrian Fae, the creature of dark fire coming. Will that be explored more? Will the Nords start to see other Fae and folktale-like creatures come into their sort of pantheon, or is this just the leftover cautionary tale from an older age?
Well, I can't really say much. I think we have teased in the past that a lot of the things that we see in actual Viking mythology, Nordic mythology rather, we will see in a twisted way, and we have already. Like, it is known that Thor, Odin, all that pantheon were actually exiles, both Spire and Weaver exiles that created this pantheon to control, lead, remains to be seen, the humans.
Mm.
So there are other figures from Nordic mythology that will appear. Surtur, okay, we have mentioned before that Surtur was essentially Haslia, and his crusade was Ragnarok, that saw Yggdrasil being burned. So in a way, the last Firechild is also the last Crusader.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ragnarok went very, very well for certain people. For the Einherjar, not so much. Although also the fact that that Loki did his business and then made good his escape, which means potentially we've still got a Loki out there causing mischief and problems for people.
I can say we have glimpsed a little at Loki, although I don't think people have.
Oh, they've not put two and two together yet. We don't know exactly where he's lying. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think that's also kind of the interesting thing with the Nords, that mythology and history are so mixed exactly because the tradition is oral, and down the line things change, twist.
Sure.
That some things can be right in front of them and then they don't really notice. And for a persona like Loki, this goes doubly so, I think.
Yeah. The interesting thing now will be how many people start poring over the stories, lore, and bits and pieces that are on the website and trying to find those little keys. There'll be string and maps all over the place as people try and Dan Brown this.
I admit that since I've done this myself for various IPs growing up, there is a sort of sadistic pleasure in doing that to other people now. No, I don't think it's a sadistic pleasure. I think it's a genuine pleasure for fans to exactly give them enough so that they might understand or they might not, and both have their joy. It is a difficult balance to achieve. I'm striving to achieve it. I hope that I'm achieving it so far with what we write, but we'll see.
And also, when you've got all of those pieces meshing together, it enriches all of the world as a whole, because you know they're not disparate, unconnected parts. The Nords are as much part of the world as any of the other factions that started the game, because they cross-pollinate and everything comes together. It's not just, oh, we've got a new continent and here's a new race. You've never really heard about them before, whereas they're little glimpses in previous bits of lore and history that tie everything together and make it more lived in.
That is one of the main reasons we're doing the spotlights, if we're honest, because when you present a faction for a game, you have to, of course, concentrate on that faction.
Sure.
So what we call tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, which is the lore behind the faction, the sub-faction, and then the units, it has to be concentrated on that. You will rarely see, or you will see very minimal influence from other factions there, which is why the spotlights, we feel, exactly address this issue, that they show that this is a living, breathing world. There's connections with everything, even with factions that we haven't revealed yet. There is a reason we haven't revealed so many hints and their place around them. It's not because we don't want to spoil or we keep it secret. It's because I think it's better for the people to kind of establish some things, knowing that they are richer below the surface, and then slowly introduce, like the so-called, what we call sorcerer kings. They already trade with definitely with the city-states, definitely with 100 kingdoms to an extent, even possibly with some of the Wadroon. But have we seen them? No, because right now in the narrative they are not there. Well, and in the game they're not there.
Sure.
They do not influence the major events that we're following. So we keep them in the background. I think this is what the spotlights are trying to do. It's why we chose the term spotlight for them.
Yeah.
It's exactly drawing attention to the little things that make the world living and breathing for all factions.
Yeah, it's like peeling back an onion in reverse. You start with a core, and then we're just adding layers. And well, I suppose it's like a pearl in that respect. Then every time adds another layer and expands the richness of the world as well.
Oh, that's a lovely way to talk about our lore. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, it's fascinating to see. I do like I'm a fan of Nordic history, and I like the intermingling of the familiar with a whole new rich pantheon and world to explore as well. I love the combination for the Nords there, and the Songs of the Last Firechild, being a fan of folklore and tales. Seeing some of the Nord folklore come through and seeing their little rhymes and catchy little numbers that they are about the soldier boy. It's definitely one for people to go and have a look at. The spotlight is up on the website already, Para Bellum Wargames. We'll drop a link below, but let us know what you think, folks. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.